And welcome everybody to the X Factor podcast. Today, a great episode hitting you anywhere around the country, anywhere around the world. We're gonna talk about college football. You already know the deal. It's Tuesday. Talk about college football. We're gonna get NFL talk later on, and then we're also gonna get some good old NBA talk over stuff that happened over the last couple of days. So we're gonna start off here talking about Georgia versus Florida, the number one team. Georgia facing Florida here, and it's gonna be, to me, coming into this game, I was worried a little bit about Georgia because Brock Bowers, and I thought Carson Beck, like, if it wasn't Brock Bowers, like, he probably wouldn't play the best wouldn't play the best. He comes in and legit just went in and kind of like nothing. He came in and did everything that a lot of people expected Carson Beck to do. People expected Carson Beck to play good, and then you got some people that expected him to play I thought he was going to play but no, he comes out, he throws 300 yards. He was 19 for 28, 315 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dejuan Edwards, 16 carries, 95 yards, 5.9 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Very good game from him. Kendall Milton had a little bit, 13 carries, 55 yards, touchdown. Lad McConkey was easily went off. Without Brock Bowers, he was just, he stepped up for everyone and made everything better. He had 6 catches, 135 yards, a touchdown. He was easily one of the higher points of this game. And then Dominic Levitt, he had a very good game, 4 catches, 83 yards. He helped the team a lot, and he also came in and shown why, Brock Bowers ain't the only one on this team. We got other guys that can come in, take this spot, and, do what they need to do. Defensively, I feel like they did very well. They held him to 20 points. Defense played very, very good. Carson Beck proved me wrong, especially. So it was a very interesting way to go, and see if they went. They went into Florida, and a Florida team who, in my opinion, has had just an all right season. They were 5-2 coming into this game, and they come in some good attitude. Feel like they have a chance to win it, and they Georgia just they pulled them off and won. They stay the number one team in the country. As of for Florida, I feel like Florida first drive they had a very good chance. They looked very good. Second drive, I feel like they had a lateral play, and when they went for the lateral, the receiver bobbled in his hands and it went bad, and then a sack after that, and then after that it just went down. And when you play a team like Georgia, your defense has to be elite. I'm slowly starting to realize that later on in the year, if you're gonna play teams like Georgia or Michigan or Ohio State, or Florida State, your defense has to, or Washington or Oregon, your defense has to be elite. Otherwise, them quarterbacks are gonna throw something on you. And as much as I criticize Kyle McCord, he still has Marvin Harrison. He still has Trayvon Henderson, Uboka, and all that. He still has all that around him, so he could still throw. So he could still, do things. When it comes to the big games, I don't think he could do that. But defense, when you have to score. When you have to have an elite defense, or if you don't have an elite defense, you have to score on 90% of your drives. And they did not. And we seen what happened when it was 38-6 at the end of 38-7 at the end of the third. But Florida, they got a couple garbage touchdowns to make the score look better than a 43-7 loss, 43-20 loss. As of for Florida, I feel like they still have a good shot to really try to finish the year strong. In my opinion, and they still have time to really show, or Graham Mertz, in my opinion, has to prove why he is, why he is still, a good quarterback. And Graham Mertz has shown some of that this year. And he really, if he wants to, prove everyone wrong, he needs to play teams when he goes to play Georgia or whatever. He needs to show, why they're still, one of the better teams in college football. And, for the Gators, the rest of their schedule, they have, let's see here, I'm looking right now, they have Arkansas November 4th this weekend, then they go on and play 13 LSU, then they have to play 14 Missouri, and 4 Florida State. So, and realistically, I see them winning 1 or 2 of these games. I bet you they have a chance against Missouri, and they will beat Arkansas. But when you go up against Florida State or LSU, they're going to run you right through the ground. I feel like that's what's just going to happen. So they're easily going to end the year probably with 6 wins. 6-7 wins. But it's not going to look good as when they were 5-2. As for Georgia, they still got a couple games left. They still got Missouri next weekend. I feel like they have a good game there. Last year it was a very close game. I feel like Missouri's going to bring them again, a close game again this year. And Georgia, I feel like they're just going to try the best they can to get Brock Bowers and try to help him and get him back as soon as they can. Then they got Mississippi. They got Ole Miss. It's going to be another tough game, but I feel like they still got another good one right there. And then of Tennessee, I think they got Tennessee. After what Alabama did to them, I expect Georgia to do the same. And then, of course, they got Georgia Tech. They can easily finish the year undefeated, but the next 3 games are against ranked teams. Depending on what Tennessee and Ole Miss does over the next couple of weeks, or Tennessee in that matter, Tennessee might not be ranked in the next couple of weeks. Who knows? But Missouri, they got to play. It's going to be tough. Ole Miss is going to be tough. Tennessee, that's going to be tough. And Georgia Tech, I feel like they got an easy win over them. So it's going to be a very solid finish for them, and then probably try to go for the undefeated season and try to go back for a national championship. We're gonna go on and we're gonna talk about the second ranked, or the third ranked team in the country. Ohio State Buckeyes go on and play Wisconsin. They coming in Wisconsin, I feel like they're having a very strong year. They took a tough loss to Iowa a couple weeks ago. They're 5-2 coming into the game. Really needed to prove that they were one of the better teams in college football. And let's just say it was, the offense didn't fully show up. They had a fumble early in the game. Wisconsin's defense, they got the ball. And, Wisconsin, they showed up, and, they the next drive, they legit fumbled it back to them. So it's like, you cannot let those happen. You cannot let those plays happen, and you cannot let, when you're playing Ohio State, or when you're playing Michigan, or playing Georgia, when you get a turnover, you got to make sure you get at least, you got to have to get a touchdown. Or a field goal. You have to get some sort of points, otherwise it was a failure on that drive. And I get it's a failure for a lot of drives you don't score, but if you're playing big teams like this and great teams that have a chance to go for a national championship, you have to do that. And you have to score, and they didn't score. Offense, they just weren't fully there. Defense kept them in the game for a lot of it. It's just that offense couldn't fully do nothing. Braden Locke is the one who started, and he really showed that he could not really fool the offense just yet. And you look at this Badger team, and you've seen what Tanner Mordecai was able to do with this, and he got into a good start. I believe he got hurt or something. I believe he got hurt, earlier in the year. So that's what really caused him to not play. Um, but Braden Locke, he was 18 for 39, 162 yards, a touchdown. Not a very, very good game from him. Braden Allen, 10 for 50, not a very solid. No touchdowns. They had 25 carries, only 94 yards. Not a very good game when it came to offense, like I said. Defensively, they were able to get 4 sacks. Darrell Peterson, Jake Chaney, and CJ Goetz. And, they had 6 TFLs, 2 interceptions. Defense was able to do a lot and get them to, and like I said, the defense did their part. It's just that offense has to do their part, and they didn't do their part. And Kyle McCord, 17 for 26, 2 touchdowns. Travion Henderson, great game, 24 for 161. Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, the guy of the game, 6 catches, 123, 2 touchdowns. He was very good in his showing against Wisconsin, proving that he and we need to have a little bit of a discussion here, because there's going to be some discussion whether or not if Marvin Harrison Jr. is better than Marvin Harrison Sr. There should be some very big talk around that. Like, Marvin Harrison was a great wide receiver, but Marvin Harrison Jr. seems like he's just slowly getting his way up them tracks and slowly getting himself up to where we feel that he could become the best player he could be. As of Ohio State, like I said, that first fumble on the first drive was not good defense. Got the ball back later on. They had a good defense, making sure Wisconsin was not able to score. Marvin Harrison, crazy man. Like I said, crazy man. Offense is Marvin Harrison's very special. Let's just put it at that. And and when it comes to Ohio State, I always talk about this team, and I always feel like, do they have a chance to, go undefeated? Do they have a chance to do everything, become, do they have a chance to go in and beat teams like Georgia, Michigan? And yes, they did beat Penn State last week. And yes, they beat them. We can get that. They beat them. They face Rutgers, Michigan State, Minnesota. They're going to win those 3 games. They got to play out Michigan, November 25th. And I still feel that Michigan is still going to win. And yes, they still have that sign stealing investigation going on and all that, but let's be honest here, if it was a team like Purdue or Rutgers doing it, no one really much would talk about it. So, and plus, let's just be honest, a lot of teams cheat that no one talks about it, but no one's gonna talk about it. But, he's, and they were, when Ohio State was going up, one of the better not ranked teams in college football, and I feel like, now seeing how they do, they're gonna play teams like Michigan. They gotta score more than what they've been doing. They scored 20 on Penn State. They scored, 24 on Wisconsin. When you play Michigan, they're scoring at least 40 points a game. You gotta score more than that. And I don't even know if they have. I think they've done that once this year. I think they've done that once this year. I think they've done that. Let's see. They scored 37 against Maryland. They scored 47 on Purdue. So they've done it 3 times. They've done it 2 times. They've scored over 42 times this year. On Western Kentucky University, 63, and they scored 41 on Purdue. And then they scored 35 on Youngstown State, and they scored 37 on Maryland. So they've been able to get some high-scoring games, but when you're facing tougher competition like Penn State and Wisconsin, look what's been the score. 2012, 24-10. They've been able to keep it close. Offense hasn't been able to do much. And when you go in to play with Michigan, the environments are always crazy, so it's going to be very, very concerning to see as a coach to say, can they come in and beat? And Ryan Day, of course, is going to say, yes, he still believes in the team, but you got to believe in that team very good to know, whether or not this is going to be the future and what they're going to do. As of Ohio State, like I said, they're gonna win at least 3 of the next 4 games, in my opinion. I do think that Michigan is just gonna be the tougher team, and it's just gonna be very. And as of for Wisconsin, they still gotta play Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Minnesota. I believe they could win easily every single one of these games. I believe they can beat Indiana, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, as they are in the race with Iowa for the division. I believe they are now tied with Iowa. Yeah, or no, the conference record right now is tied with Iowa and Minnesota, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. They're all tied at 3-2. Iowa does have the advantage because they are 6-2, and Minnesota 5-3, and when Nebraska's 5-3, and Wisconsin 5-3. And Iowa should easily be 7-1 right now. Let's just be honest. But let's see here. It's gonna be very, and then I believe they can win every single one of those games. But when you look at teams like Iowa, they still got. This weekend I believe they have Northwestern. They're going to beat Northwestern. They're going to come in. They're going to beat Rutgers. They're going to beat Illinois. And I do believe they will beat Nebraska. And it's not because they're going to be their offense. It's going to be because of the defense. Defense is going to come in and they're going to step up with Brian Ferentz leaving at the end of the year. And that came official that Brian Ferentz, this will be his last year as an Iowa Hawkeyes offensive coordinator. And man, am I happy. And I am not a person that condones wanting people to get fired, but when you're doing such a bad of a job over the last couple of years, you need to really you need to show something. You need to at least show something. You brought in Cade McNamara, and he didn't even play well. Receivers are awful. I get, he got hurt. Both tight ends got hurt, but receivers can't catch footballs. Your quarterback's a potato, and it's just like, how do you try to fix it? And I don't feel like they've ever even had a chance to try to fix it. So, let's just thank God that Brian Ferentz will be gone at the end of the year, because I feel like that is just the best decision for everybody. So, going into another game that happened over, like I said, I like to talk about some of these bigger games. And it is easily, which one was it? Blah, 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 blah. Washington and Stanford. Florida State beat up on Wake Forest. Did not watch the game. But it looks like a very big one from them. Washington versus Stanford. And I want to talk about this team because Washington, last 2 weeks, has had very close scores against very teams. Now, you look at the scores, at halftime, it was 21-13. They got it to 21-19. They brought it up to, 28-26. It was very close to where it was only a 2-point game until Washington scored at the end. So it was a very, very close game. And, I look at this Stanford football team, and I look and I see, Stanford only scored 23 points on ranked teams. And those ranked teams Stanford's offense was outscored 130 to 23. 23 points that Stanford offense scored on USC, UCLA, and Oregon. 130 of those points came from USC, UCLA, and Oregon. They put on that defense. Stanford only put up 23 against those teams. They put up 30, I believe there was 33 points on this Washington defense. And as of what happened last week, Washington's defense was very good stopping Arizona State. But, it's I'm not saying I'm worried, but it's like that's a very concerning thing to really talk about when you got, a team that's, one of the best teams ranked 5 right now. The offense is easily one of the best offenses in college football, in my opinion. You're just lucky Michael Penix is there to do his thing. You're lucky that Jalen Polk and Romadeus is there to do their job. Because if you look at the stats, with Washington facing USC next week and then when they're facing USC, they got to play 18th ranked Utah. They got to play 16th ranked Oregon State, and they got to beat those teams plus a Pac-12 if you want to be in the playoffs. You got to hope for Ohio State or Florida State to lose for that stuff to happen. And I think Washington scores a lot on the drives, and the main reason is because Romadeus and Jalen Polk. Both of them receivers come up. If you put their stats together from this season, they have put up 97 catches for 1,743 yards, 14 touchdowns. Michael Penix stats, 203 completions to 294 attempts, 2,943 passing yards, 24 touchdowns. So 10 of those touchdowns went to someone else. And the next best guy when it comes to receiving yards or catching is Jalen McMillan, 20 catches for 331 yards. So I'm gonna say if Romadeus and Jalen Polk's out, I'm taking Washington State off my grid right now. Because them two has been the best things to happen to Michael Penix, and I still think Michael Penix is very good, despite if they had them or not. But you have to notice how good Romadeus and Jalen Polk has been good. What their impact has been on this offense. They have became one of the better teams because of that. And I believe there's a potential chance that they could put 60 points on this USC defense next week. I really believe that. I really believe that they could put 60 points on that defense. They can put a 40-piece on Utah. They could put a 40-piece on Oregon State. And they finished off with Washington State at the end of the year. They could put a 50-piece on that defense, I believe. But USC defense is one of the worst defenses, and they could go in and legit ruin them. Just come in and ruin the whole game for them. And, it's just one of those things where it's like, it could happen. And as for Stanford, they still got Washington State, Oregon State, California, Notre Dame. I don't believe they're going to win any of these games. I believe I think their final win was going to be against Colorado. I don't think they're going to do good against Oregon State, Washington State, California. We've seen what California did against USC. And then, of course, you got Notre Dame at the end of the year, which they're going to lose. But, man, it is very concerning for this Washington defense, though. I will say that. The concern for this Washington defense is very, very concerning. Based off what has happened over the last couple of weeks. And now, speaking of concern, let's talk about some good old Sooners football. Let's talk about some good old Oklahoma Sooners football. They played Kansas, and let's just say Kansas pulled off the upset. Coming into this game, Kansas, USCF put 29 on Oklahoma's defense last week. When Kansas played them earlier in the year, they won 51-22. Just pointing that out to start off with. Oklahoma offense at the start, not great. They had a pick six, which was just a good play by the corner. Not a very, it wasn't like the worst thing from the quarterback. But they came back 14-14. They got a fumble recovery off a punt, and then a touchdown to make it 24 or 21, 14 at 21-17 at halftime. Very sloppy game when it came to offense, in my opinion. it was more of the running game is really what really got this whole thing. Was Tyree Walker, Dylan Gabriel in the running game. He did very good, 3 rushing touchdowns. When it came to the passing game, only 14 for 19, 171 yards, 0 touchdowns, and interception. The weather, was also very, at the time being. Devin Neal, 125 carries, 112 yards, a touchdown. Jason Bean did his thing on offense, but still had 2 very bad interceptions in the fourth, I believe. It was all in the fourth quarter when that happened. There was a chance where it's like you could sit there and say, well, maybe Kansas doesn't have enough. And, after the second interception, maybe that's just it. And the next thing you know, Kansas gets the ball back. They run down, 50-some seconds left. Oklahoma's defense is like, okay, let them score. Let us get time to get the ball and, do all that. So they did. And they got down to, I believe, into the red zone. They got down into the red zone. And they couldn't finish it off. The last play, off a 3-man rush, they got easy pressure, which to me is kind of embarrassing. And Kansas just got the dub. It's just offense to me is just very sloppy. And you look at this Oklahoma team, and you see what happened when they beat Texas earlier in the year, and they're like, Texas sees what happens, like, how did we lose to this team? Well, you still lost, but it was still just by like a couple seconds. You guys only lost to them by a couple, like the last games, like last score or whatever. So it's like, what does Oklahoma do next? Well, what you need to do is just go back to what you're doing. You were 7-0 by this time. You're playing very good football. You go on. You play Oklahoma State next week. Boom, you take them out. Boom, you play West Virginia. Boom, take them out. You play BYU. Take them. They can finish the year with 11 wins. They can finish the year 11-1. They can still go in and try to fight for that playoff spot. They still have that chance to do it. A very easy schedule, in my opinion, going in. Oklahoma State, they are 6-2. I do believe Oklahoma State will fight it out. But, it's just not going to be enough for them to get the W. West Virginia, they have a very solid, they're 5-3. It's, you got to look in there and you got to say, what can we do? What can we do? Well, you need some wins if you want to get up in the Big 12. Let's see here. You also, Kansas, it's very tight for Oklahoma right now, because if they lose to Oklahoma State or West Virginia or whatever, it's going to be very tight, because they're still tight with Oklahoma State or Iowa State and Kansas State. It's very, very close when it comes to, who's the leader in the Big 12. And, with Oklahoma, they've won 4 straight. Iowa State's won 4 straight. Texas has won 2 straight. It's going to be very, Oklahoma loses one game, it could be the end for the Pac-12 championship. And, of course, that will also include, the championship, the national championship in that case, too. And all that. But as of you look at for Kansas football, they still got Iowa State. It's going to be a tough game. I think they'll pass them. They got Texas Tech. I think they'll pass them. Boom, you got Kansas State. It's going to be a very hard game. I think they got them. And I think it's an easy win against Cincinnati. So they can finish the year undefeated. In the last 4 games. They can finish the year winning those games. But Kansas is, last year they started the year 5-0. They kind of went off a downhill after that. But this year they're proven right now they can come back and be the team that they were last year when they were 5-0. So let's just get that out and try to finish it off. Oregon State gets upset. Well, not really an upset, to Arizona. Coming into the game, Arizona was 4-3. Oregon State was 6-1. it was a very, very tough game going throughout. The last fourth quarter, it came down to the wire pretty much. DJ Ukulele, I like to call him DJ Ukulele, the quarterback for Oregon State, 16 for 30, very good game from him. It's, they didn't really do much to really prove anything to me. They just came in and Arizona was just a better team. But people, should we really call it an upset? I get, when you're ranked, it's like different, but the rankings, it's such a weird, because like you could be like 6-2 and not be ranked, and it's like, oh, when you're not ranked, you're not good. Well, it doesn't matter. You can be 10-1 and not be ranked, and you could still be good. But Arizona with a good game, good win over Oregon State. See what they could do to finish off the year. But I want to worry about North Carolina, because North Carolina has been down a spiral. They lost against Virginia. Then they go into Georgia Tech and they lose. How? With a quarterback in Drake May, who's supposedly one of the best quarterbacks in the draft. One of the best quarterbacks in the draft doesn't lose to teams like Georgia State. And trust me, I'm not even gonna be nice to Caleb Williams either, because Caleb Williams, I'm not gonna be very nice to, because he almost lost. Well, he didn't almost lose to. USC almost lost to freaking California. So, Georgia Tech, they scored 24 points in the second, and then they scored 22 in the end of the game, in the fourth quarter. So by the time the fourth quarter hit, it was already 35-24, 42-30, or 42, or 42-24. It was, and they came back and they won the thing. It's like, and you can't blame quarterbacks for how defense plays, but when your defense plays like this, you have to step up, and unfortunately they didn't do that. They lost, and 8 penalties, very bad. Running game was pretty well for them. But Drake May, and to me, Drake May doesn't even seem like he is the best quarterback, or I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't really see him as much as like a freaking top threat quarterback like guys like Caleb Williams or J.J. McCarthy or whatever. And if I were them, I'd be worried about North Carolina now, because those 2 losses are very concerning. And they got Campbell next, they got Duke next, Clemson next, they got NC State next. Who knows? They can lose their freaking Campbell next week. Like, who knows? They can fight a fighting camel. That they can lose to a camel next week. So it's not very good for them. But speaking of Caleb Williams, I like to talk about him. He's one of the he's one of the main guys people like to talk about. And man, I've been harsh on Caleb Williams for the last couple weeks. I know I have. But this game was on defense. This defense is awful. How do you come in there and let up 49 points on California, who at the time were 3-4? I don't know how you let that happen. And first off, they were up, I believe, 28-12, I think, at one point after half, or 28-17 after half. They had some weird halftime thing where they had the kitten. It was some weird halftime thing that happened, but Caleb Williams easily tried keeping him in the game. Marshawn Lloyd kept him in the game. This defense, I get they're about getting turnovers. I get that they were, getting TFLs or sacks. But you need to learn to play defense because you let them put 527 yards of offense on that defense. 235 rushing yards, 292 passing yards. They had more. There were 29 first downs. You know, it's just I don't know how you let that happen. To me, and that was one of the things I talked about last week. I talked about that Caleb Williams needs to, if you want to put Caleb Williams on a team, they gotta make sure they have defense, because he's not gonna be able to carry you through games like that every week in the NFL. College, yes, but NFL, it's not like that. Same thing with like when it comes to offensive line, you need to have an offensive line. It's just very, very tough for this team to have it's very hard to take this team seriously with how the defense has been playing. And man, it's just I really don't know what to say. This defense was a very disappointing game on defense. They got to play Washington, Oregon, and UCLA. There's a chance where they can lose 2 of those games. Washington, I feel like they could put 60 on them, if I'm being honest with you. But we're gonna keep going here. We're gonna talk about We're gonna finish the game. Talk about the Colorado game. Colorado got smashed. Colorado got smashed easily. Defense ruined them. UCLA just smashed them. Shedeur Sanders could not do nothing. I believe honestly, I don't even know how many sacks this team got, but I know it's going to be looking ugly. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sacks on this O-line. And Deion Sanders already said that they're going to be looking in the offensive line. And I feel like they should have said that week 1. They should have said that week 1, because this offensive line is booty. Straight up cheeks, straight out the dog. This offensive line's awful. So, they're going to try to finish off the year and try to be positive with it. But with that offensive line, it's going to be very, very concerning. So, y'all have a good day. I'm going to talk about NFL later on in the week. Got some NBA trades that happened with James Harden. That will come out soon. You got the NFL trade deadline that will happen. That will talk about that soon. That will probably come out tomorrow. So y'all stay blessed.